All right, here we go, everybody. We are live, direct from Disneyland. No, not exactly. From from each of our homes on May 6th, 2020. Welcome to the Dev Talk Show, and I'm here with my co-hosts Andy Schwam and Rich Ross, and you can see our very special guests that we're going to talk to in just a second here, and new background for me. New background for Rich. So Rich is on location somewhere virtually, and new background for Andy is on location looks like a studio of some kind. No.
This is my always background. I'm still creeping along, trying to get there one of these days.
And it looks like our guest Kevin Griffin is at Busch Gardens. Is that Williamsburg?
Is it? Yes, it is. So let's see. This is the Griffin. No relation.
Right.
This is Alpengeist. It's hard to tell. So this is Alpengeist. This is Mock Tower. One of my favorite places to go. It's currently closed, which sucks.
Sure.
Yeah.
But one day
I have been there once. Is the Griffin the one where you go up a lift hill and then just before you go over, they kind of suspend you for a second and say, "Hey, take a look at the ground."
That's right. It's a 90-degree drop, and they just kind of hold you.
They hold you there.
And I love it.
When you're on the ground and you count that out, it's really not that long. No. When you're strapped in, it's about 30 seconds. Not really.
I am so I'm a card-carrying member of the American Coaster Enthusiasts.
Oh boy.
I love roller coasters. And my favorite part of Griffin is when you're held in that downward position, you listen for the clicks because the machinery is getting itself ready to let go. Because it's holding a lot of weight, and you're sitting there, you're like, yeah, you hear, and then drop. It's such a good time.
I made one pilgrimage there when we also visited Colonial Williamsburg, and it was a ton of fun. I'm a theme park enthusiast myself. So, hey, everybody who's watching on Mixer, Twitch, or YouTube, thank you very much for forget to talk to us in the chat as we formally introduce our guest tonight, Kevin Griffin, who is an author, a teacher, a mentor, and a consultant, and a friend focusing in software development. He's been a friend to the Tech Bash conference, which I know means a ton to Andy, and also to Rich and I, who have streamed from there before. He has, I guess, 10 of those cool Microsoft MVP discs, meaning...
actually, I have like 12 because they give you a 5-year and a 10-year disc.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And he specializes in ASP.NET and web development. However, I know that, your interests are kind of like just any lifelong learner. So they go all over the place. And, he's an independent consultant specializing in helping businesses push their technology stacks into the current century. And, we'll talk about some of this stuff later, but you also have some podcasts like Two Frugal Dudes, and I can't wait to get all that. But don't forget that you can catch him at kevgriffin.com, KEVGRIFFIN.com. And here he is, Kevin Griffin. Thank you for joining the show.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, guys. You all were doing an MVP skills session last week. And you were talking about like the Dev Talk show, your individual streams. And I said, I need to get on the show. I've watched it a couple times. I need to get on the show. So I think I sent Chris, you and Andy a message. Like, we need to make this happen.
And we jumped on it. We're like, yeah, Kevin wants to come on the show. This will be fun. By the way, we should say hi. Saduki's out there in the chat. Hey, Saduki. And CTI Geek. And Joe Guadagno's here. Hey, how's everybody doing?
Hey.
Nice to see some friends out there today.
Well, thanks for joining us. And Kevin, I know that you are streaming on Twitch and gaining a following there as people are just walking through code samples with you the way they do with Andy and some of our other friends. And so that's great. And I really do enjoy watching everybody who's now sharing with the community and basically pair programming together with viewers.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. For me, let me pick something random that I haven't worked on lately, and let me work on that for an hour or two. And I've made it a goal since quarantine's kicked in to try to stream every day during the week for some period of time. And I'm on week 3 of doing that.
How's your voice holding up?
What's that?
How's your voice holding up?
Actually, not bad. It's really good practice for. There's no conference season. There's no user group season. So I need to keep my voice lubricated.
So let me ask you two questions on that. So first off, how many hours you're doing every day? How many hours a day are you doing?
Somewhere between an hour and a half to 3 hours.
That's cool. Now, I do them in like 1 hour chunks because that's all I have. But have you had this happen yet? Because it's happened to me, and you stream more than I do. So have you had it happen where you're sitting and doing regular work and you start talking out loud because you're just used to like explaining what you're doing, and you feel like there's no one out there. I'm not streaming, but you start talking about what you're doing, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. You have to keep that dialogue going. So if the imaginary person's watching, they can listen to you. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, so it's kind of embarrassing when it happens when you're not streaming and you're just working at home and talking to nobody. That's the difference between streaming and insanity, I think.
The biggest thing for me is I'll sit here and I'll go, Kevin, you're such an idiot. Like, what'd you do that for? It's such a dumb thing to do. And I do that on stream. I do it off stream. That's kind of the way I roll.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, you're here to tell us about Azure Logic Apps, which is I believe it's a feature of Azure App Service. And to be honest, I don't know much more than that, and I have some vague ideas, so I'm super excited to let you take over and really teach us about this. And I bet you a lot of folks in chat, and we're going to be rushing to take a look at this thing. So let's go right ahead.
So let's start with just general understanding of what Logic Apps is, because I just thought it was this thing that certain business people would use, and I didn't really understand what the power of it was. A really good friend of mine, and probably a good friend of everyone watching, Joel Cochran. That's a name blast to the past.
Yeah.
But Joel is real heavy in data warehousing and like data manipulation and stuff. I was on a call with him. He said, "Have you looked at Logic Apps before?" I'm like, no, that's just a thing business people use. He says, "Hold on a second." And he takes me in and shows me a demo, and it just opens my eyes to so many possibilities. So the easiest way to explain Logic Apps is that it's Zapier for developers. That's the easiest way I think I can explain. So everyone kind of knows what Zapier is, or if this then that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I don't know what that is.
So
if
you
this,
have
then that. Okay.
So more people are probably, or more non-developers are experienced with if this then that. The general idea is if something happens, a trigger, then something else happens. It might be something as simple as, and then it puts a row in a Google spreadsheet. So it's just, if something happens, then something else happens. With Zapier, it's actually a little bit more complicated. You can have the initial trigger. So something happens, and then task 1 happens, then task 2, then task 3, so on and so on. Logic Apps is that on steroids. I think it's a little bit better built for developers. So the biggest thing I've been going through right now with my different clients is I've been eliminating our background services. So we have several background tasks that we run, and it's simple things that I think every app has in some way, shape, or form. We're managing webhooks. So we have webhooks that come into our system for a variety of different things. We have different jobs that have to run on a schedule. So we run an email job every day. Well, at midnight Pacific time, we run this email job. It goes to a database, gets back some data, and it creates an email, sends it out. So we have database tables that need to get cleaned up because we fill them full of data, and then every month or so we need to go through and clean out some old records that are no longer necessary. A big thing for me, and this was the first thing I ever wrote in Logic Apps, was I had Azure Blob Storage. And so Blob Storage is like S3 on AWS. If you need something to compare it to, just a place to put files. It's really cost effective. And I was putting files in there, like a meg here, a meg there. Over 3 years, actually turns out to be a lot of megs. And I remember when I was writing the solution, I went, it's just a couple of megs here and there. It's not going to be a problem until a couple of years down the line. A couple years down the line, became a problem because the spend was starting to actually accumulate to something significant. So I'm like, well, I need to write something that will clean up blob storage. And I want this to happen on a routine. Well, the developer in me said, all right, well, I'll go write this C# script and I'll add it to our background services that are always running and tell it, all right, at midnight every day, go to blob storage and clean things up.
Sounds like a console app. That's what I'd be, right?
Yeah,
Build a
yeah, it's a
console app to do that, right?
It's some sort of cron job. It's just you're going to write code, and code is going to go do this. Writing code that talks against blob storage is not hard. It's also not like insanely easy. It's just tedious and might not work the right way the first time or the 10th time or the 15th time. It doesn't matter. So I used it as a reason to try to build a logic app. And within 5 minutes, I built a logic app that would every day go clean up blob storage and didn't write a lick of code. So it was kind of amazing, a little mind-blowing. And then with that customer, we were up to like 15 different logic apps. And our spend, we able to drop an app service that we were spending $90 a month. That's all it did. We got rid of that, and now we're running just logic apps. That's less than $10 a month. So we've drastically cut the cost of running our background services, and they're easier to use and maintain, and they do all this really cool stuff. So,
yeah,
would you like to see
awesome.
an example?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'd love
Yeah.
to.
All right. See this. It sounds like the kind of thing that, like, we hear it and we hear that it helped you. You didn't write any code.
Yep.
And one thing that we all talked about a lot there was cleanup. But I think we're all going to find out that let's not pigeonhole logic apps into cleanup. I have a feeling that we're going to see much more power behind that. And I think I even heard you say, like, you built workflows, which the kinds of things that we developers want to just break out code to do. But then we have a new problem. We're going to write code that has to be resilient and run day after day after day after day after day, and not have it just break. And then what happens? You start thinking about, well, how do I make sure this thing stays up? Do I need to monitor this thing? Do I need to write code to do that? And these problems sound solved. So can't wait to see this come in here.
That's right. All right. So I have this sample resource group. It's up and running. We'll go add a logic app.
That's right.
I love when I came in, the first thing I saw, you're in the resource group, I guess the dev talk show, you made it. And I looked up and I said, wait, Kevin's in our subscription? Like for a minute, I thought somehow it was like our sub. And I'm like, oh, it's just a resource group.
So another feature of Logic Apps is that I can hack all your resources.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Very good.
So you have to give all your Logic Apps a name. You're building one Logic app at a time. So a Logic app is it's solid. So solid principles apply. It's single responsibility. You want it to do just one thing and one thing only. Don't try to put a whole bunch of logic into a Logic app. So we'll just call this dev talk show, and we'll go and bump up our font a little. Create this.
Thanks.
So this should create pretty quickly.
And so this is you went really quick, but is this like consumption stuff, right?
Yeah. So it's consumption based. Anytime the Logic app runs, you get charged for the runtime. So if your Logic app only runs for 100 milliseconds, you're only charged for 100 milliseconds, which works really well for a lot of our cases, because so many of our cases are based off of events or time. So an event being, we get an email that comes into a very specific email address, or we're answering a webhook from our discourse form software. And sometimes at the time, at midnight Pacific time, we need to go execute a job. So this isn't software that's just always running and waiting for something to happen. It's all trigger based. So when you get into Logic Apps, you create your new Logic app, you get this great little introduction. Go watch the video if you're bored. But what Logic Apps wants to do is it wants to help you start building out the Logic app. So most Logic Apps start with some sort of trigger. And you can see here, there's a couple that you can select by that are the most popular. When an HTTP request is received, that's a fancy way of saying webhook. So if you want your Logic app to answer a webhook, you click that. If you want to set one up whenever a new tweet is posted, and this is based off the search API on Twitter, you can do that. Recurrence. So if you need something that has to happen every 10 minutes, every 2 days, every 6 months, you set up recurrence, and Logic Apps will manage that for you. Then you also notice there's fun ones like Outlook.com. You can monitor for email. And this was the second or third Logic app that I built. Was I got a request from a client that said, we have this email mailbox, and we get this email every day around 3 p.m. It's going to have an Excel file attached to it. Can you take the Excel file, take all the rows out of the file and put it into a database, and then show us the database results in our web app? I went, cool. Well, remember, I had my developer hat on, and my developer hat was going, I'm going to have to write a crap ton of code to do this. And now I'm starting to get scared because I'm writing code that talks to an Excel file, and I'm writing code that goes to a Gmail mailbox and has to pull down email. There's just so many things that can go wrong in that entire scenario. So I came in here, and what I did was I went to a blank Logic app, and this takes you into the Logic App Editor, which is all GUI based. And first thing it wants to do is ask you what your trigger is. And I said, well, is Gmail in here? And look
at that. Yeah.
Gmail's here. That's cool. What's the trigger? Well, when a new email arrives, remember, I had no idea what was going on. And I saw this, went, all right, this is a good starting point. And what you can do, and I'm not going to walk through the process with Gmail, but you can connect this using OAuth to your Gmail account, and it will monitor that mailbox. And whenever it gets a new email, it'll start going through all the different steps. So let's throw this one away because we're not going to do Gmail right now.
So maybe I can build my own spam filter somehow, right? Like
you could technically, because once you get the email, there's going to be smart tips to say, well, what do you want to do with this email?
Yeah, that's cool.
So let's look at something. Let's go in, and so I'll just show you all the list. And these aren't all triggers.
Wow.
But these are the different connectors you can use.
Yes.
Logic Apps works on this idea of a connector. So you're not necessarily doing the work in Logic Apps itself. You are calling a method in a connector, or like say another assembly. And there's all these different connectors you can choose from.
Are these community contributions, or are these like built in from Microsoft?
A lot of them are Microsoft or corporate sponsors that are paying.
Gotcha. Yeah, they want to be here, right? So
Yeah.
they're providing it. Okay.
Well, let's start with something that's probably actually accessible. Let's start with Twitter. And
Sure.
so I'll say when a new tweet is posted, and I'll go sign in to Twitter. I'll move this off to the other screen. Hold on, folks.
And you'll post your credentials in the chat so we can all do this? Yeah, thanks.
Yep. Okay, so let's come up with a search term. We'll say, well, at the Dev Talk Show, and we'll check for this every minute. And I can tell it when I want to start checking for tweets. If I want to, I don't have to. But it says you're connected to Kevin's account, OneKevGriff. Well, when this happens, what do we do next? So we'll set up a new item or a new step. But when a tweet comes in, what do we want to do with that tweet? Let's see. Does Twitter have anything for me?
Look at this.
Well, maybe I want to post a tweet.
Yeah.
So this might be dangerous. We'll see what it does. Come on, Logic Apps.
If the Dev Talk Show is trending, we're going to see a lot of action here.
Yeah.
And You know,
Oh, you know
it
what?
could
I'll
happen.
retweet.
It could
Here we
happen.
go. Here we go. So let me delete that step. All right, so I'll retweet. Okay, so when someone tweets at the Dev Talk Show, I will retweet it. Well, it's going to ask me, what tweet am I retweeting? So I click on the box, and because I'm zoomed in, it's a little harder to see. I get this dialogue that helps me build what content should go into this box. You see here on the left, I have when a new tweet is posted, and there's some metadata underneath. There's some properties. These are all the properties that I get back from the event when a new tweet is posted. So Logic Apps takes this data and passes it down the line to the next step in the process. So I can say, well, let's retweet the original tweet ID. All right. Trim user. Actually, I have no idea what that means. Let's see. Trim user information. Let's say no. I'm guessing trim user might take tweeted initially off. Okay. Well, whatever. Let's leave it at that. Let's just say that is a complete Logic app right now.
Okay.
I'll hit save. Oh, all right, I broke something. It must not like the @ sign. I'm guessing
Really?
it doesn't like the @ sign. Okay, so
Yeah.
it saved successfully. I'm going to hit run, and this is my test workflow. So everyone out there watching, someone tweet at the Dev Talk Show.
Suzuki already did.
All right. So something happened. All right, so the tweet came in, the search text, and who was it? It was Suzuki.
Suzuki wins.
So this show is great.
Aw.
So let's see. There's all the metadata for the tweet that comes in here as well. So you see, she mentioned the Dev Talk Show. She mentioned me. Her information. Let's zoom past that. Well, it's all public anyway. So go follow Suzuki on Twitter.
Yeah.
But I had an error. I tried to retweet it and it failed. See the little exclamation? So it's going to tell me bad request. Why was it a bad request? So this is more Twitter sucking. That's probably the best way I can put it. So let's go back and let's do something else. So instead of the retweeting, let's delete. What if? All right, let's walk through some of the cases here. I need See, if I was more prepared, I had like this whole planned out thing, but it's all right.
You know what's amazing is when you opened up the list of connectors and we were still in the A's. That's what
really?
I do. Wow. Yeah. See, like we didn't even get the fourth row was still the A's, and I thought, wow, there's so many. How cool!
And I think there's like
a lot of options.
There's 200-ish around that number of connectors out there. So there's pretty much a large landscape to choose
How about?
from.
Look at this, like cognitive services are in here.
Yeah.
So I can do something. So I could probably get it. Maybe I could even take an image out of a tweet and look to see. I mean, we're just talking about Twitter things, but I'm just thinking, I see custom vision on here. I wonder if I could do that, you know?
Well, let's take the tweet and let's
language. Yeah. Let's. Oh, that's a great idea. This will be fun.
So, all right. So we need a connection ID. You know what we'll do? I'll just go create that real fast.
Okay. And you know what I like about us going, I think in my head, one of the first things I thought of was, okay, I see, take a tweet and then probably add it to a database or maybe something. But what you're showing here is that just within Logic Apps itself is still a ton of power. Like, oh, let's analyze the tweet's language. This is more than just cleanup. I mean, this is way beyond.
Yeah, well, certainly. Yeah. Now, while you're creating that other stuff, are you creating the other stuff, Kevin?
I'm creating cognitive services
on a different screen. Okay, yeah. So, a couple of things are popping into my head. Now, I have a hard time as a developer giving up on some of these real developer things, like the code. Right now, I see something called Code View. I'm kind of curious to that. What's going through my mind is source control and, and that kind of stuff. And I'm guessing that that this stuff must sort of all work together. But, just kind of curious to see if we can.
So, all right, hold on one second.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm actually going to delete this anyway, so I don't know why I'm hiding it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But
well, because Sudoku will just start slamming this thing, that's probably what's going to happen.
Okay. So we're back in.
We're extra careful here. We try to be extra careful here on the show too.
And usually we make a mistake and something slips.
Yeah.
Right. See, Sudoku's ready. She's ready for us with her PowerShell script.
So
she has a Logic app. Probably
use cognitive services. You have to give it an ID. We'll give it the tweet ID.
Now this part here is pretty
Unless
cool.
There's
Kevin,
something
right?
better. And we'll give it tweet ID. And then we'll give it the text to analyze. So that should be the original tweet text. And notice as I put these in, it puts the Twitter logo. If I mouse over it, it tells me, it gives me this kind of cryptic language of where it's getting the data from. And that will come back into play here in a moment. So language, we'll just assume English. And then, let's post back to Twitter. Can I just do a post by myself? Yeah, post a tweet. So I can build this text. The tweet, and I should have a link in here to the original tweet, I believe. No. All right, we'll just say the tweet by at screen name of the user. I want the original tweet. The original tweet tweeted by. There we go.
Okay.
As a rating of. Now let me scroll up again. I should have the score between 0 and 1 of.
The sentiment. Right?
Oh, okay. So.
Okay.
Logic Apps did something for me. All right. The cognitive services task takes in a document, can take in technically several documents at the same time. So think of this as the text sentiment is returning an array or a list of objects. Even though that list of objects might only have one object in it, I still have to use it like a list.
Right.
So,
right.
Logic Apps has built-in operators. There's a for each built into Logic Apps.
Oh, that's great.
So what it's going to do, and it figured this out for me, was because I told it I wanted to work over a document, it automatically created the for each for me in the collection I'm for eaching over. So it's going to go through and take all the documents. Well, it's ever only going to be one at any given time. But I have to kind of work against this condition. I could technically write a custom accessor that the for each, but that's too much for me to try to do live. So we'll ignore that. Let's see if this works. So then I'm going to hit run.
We need a tweet again.
Sudoku, where you at?
Sudoku's going to do it for us. It looks bad if we as hosts say the Dev Talk Show is awesome, right?
All right. Now let's see. Did
it hit already? Oh, okay, cool.
Well, I don't see me tweeting anything, so this might not. Well, let's see what happens. Okay, so we got a new tweet.
Inputs, yeah.
The tweet was from
only a triathlete.
Yeah. So
thanks for the tweet.
We did the sentiment. Okay, so I didn't get any output. So the output didn't work correctly. Because the text going in was null. All right.
Maybe you didn't map it somehow, right?
Yeah, so my mapping was wrong. So we'll go back into the designer. We'll see what we did wrong. Original tweet. Maybe that's
text to analyze. Yes, you need the tweet text. Oh, I see tweet text.
Text. So right tweet text. We'll use that. All right.
So when you set this up, I want to just double check what you're doing or if you're doing anything, to put it in what kind of feels like this debug mode where it's sitting there waiting for the trigger. I'm just going to
That's
watch
right.
more closely this time.
That's right. So I hit save, and I'll put it into run.
Okay, you put it into run. All
And
right.
you see here it says to see
even
it work,
tells you.
create a new tweet.
Yeah,
So someone out there create a new tweet.
that's great. Okay. Yeah, the first couple times I just didn't see it.
There
And
it
look
is.
at that. That's awesome.
All right. So I have a small bug, but if you go look at my tweet, which is, well, hold on. So there's my tweet.
So
yeah, I had a bug in the who
yeah, I see it.
tweeted
I
the
see it.
original tweet.
Yeah.
But but I got the sentiment.
Yeah.
So what was wow, that was a low one, 0.22.
Yeah, that's pretty low. Who didn't like us there?
Who doesn't?
It's hard to tell which tweet
It
it
was
was.
a dookie.
No, she said great. Sentiment is great.
Oh, but then
All
the
right.
word
Oh, so
sorry,
she's
maybe?
sorry for the delay.
Distracted,
Can't say
sorry. Right.
How
Right.
interesting.
That might be it. And sentiment
That's okay.
analysis, that's what it's doing. Obviously, it's looking at overall words, right?
Yeah, right.
And I've played around with some of that stuff. Maybe you guys have too. And it's really cool, but it's basing it on like lots of words. So I could throw another one out there if you guys want, right?
Yeah,
Well,
sure.
So I like to figure out what I
So-
did wrong here. Okay, so somehow it lost its binding. So it
Okay,
just
yeah.
put the straight text. Maybe I did something accidentally. So let's change this to the tweet by let's just say user by username. The tweet by has a rating of blah. I wish it. So I have the tweet ID. I could create the. No, well, I could create the URL. Let's see if I could do this dynamically. So we'll put in that,
Oh, wow.
and then we'll just fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
this
cool.
is the username, and then this is the ID, which was up here in the top somewhere.
I gotta wonder while you're filling this stuff in, and I don't know if Kevin knows this or anybody else can chime in here, but like, are there Twitter issues? Like, obviously these hooks are in here, but I could see us. You could tweet a heck of a lot out of this thing. Is that going to get into some sort of conflict with some Twitter rules or something? I don't know. And that's not the point of this
Yeah, I don't think so.
talk, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Cool. So it worked. Let's go. Let me bring it over here on my screen. So the tweet by Suzuki, I forgot to put the @ sign, so it didn't reference her.
Yeah, that's cool.
Has a rating of 0.9. Good rating. Automate all the things. Sentiment is great. So this is, and it'll just keep doing this. If I come back over to just the Dev Talk Show and I hit refresh, you'll see every iteration as it's run, and then how long it takes. So we're talking 0.7 seconds.
I did one, but I don't see it in here. Wait, did mine come through there?
See.
I'm looking for the retweet back. I'm wondering, does it only work when you're like, you hit run, but it's
only
still
when
running,
a new
right?
tweet is posted. It should not work on retweets because
No, I did a new one, but it's okay. I might have done it too soon or something like that.
a Dev Talk Show.
Don't worry about it. I probably did it.
Thingy.
Yeah, it's fine. This is
Yeah.
cool. This is
So
cool.
this is just one example.
You can have fun with this stuff.
Oh, because it's checking on an interval, I believe. So it's checking every 1 minute.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
not every
problem.
second
Yeah.
like that, right?
So I could change this down to every second, which actually wouldn't be that bad because it probably would only take a couple milliseconds to run. If I say every second,
Oh my
now
god.
what's going to happen is you see it's filling up with triggers.
Yep, I saw one of my tweets come across your timeline. So
Yeah.
Well, now there's a whole bunch. Oh, look. Yeah, it just spit out a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
Tweet by Kevin
Spamming
Griffin,
Twitter.
tweet by Space Shot. Here's mine. And pick mine up. It's interesting. Mine, it got picked up a little later. I got a 98. I am very positive about the Dev Talk Show. More than Space Shot. Space Shot is only at 94.
I'm
And
not as
my-
positive.
you're not as positive. So I mean, you're welcome.
So what I can do,
Obviously,
so
I was the best part of the show tonight, clearly. So thank you all.
No, you know what I think the best part of the show is we have a comment saying that you can write your own private extensions.
yeah,
That's pretty cool because I
that's
think
right.
that's something we were gonna want to know in a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's something I've had on my to-do list to experiment with because I have several use cases for Logic Apps where it's not built in the Logic Apps. And one of the things I do, so I'm going to disable this Logic app so it doesn't run. We'll go back into edit. And this is what I ran into with the example I was using. We were reading an email address, pulling out an Excel spreadsheet, reading the Excel spreadsheet with one of the connectors that it reads, takes Excel spreadsheets and turns it into JSON. Amazing. And I ran into a problem because Excel date times are they're like epoch time. So there's no converter in Logic Apps to get that into a legitimate date time object that we can read or more importantly use in other parts of Logic Apps. So I hit this wall and asked myself, well, what am I supposed to do? I need to convert this number into a date time, and Logic Apps won't do it for me. And the answer is Azure Functions. So
Cool.
for any of these steps, you could come in and just write an Azure function. And so it's detecting Azure Functions that I have on in my subscription. So I could come in here. It's going to show me all the functions I have.
Oh man,
and
they make it easy for you.
I can pass whatever I want to into those functions, and this will become a step. So when this Logic app executes, it will go execute that Logic app, which is consumption based as well, and whatever it returns, if I'm using something like Swagger or API schemas,
Open API, yeah.
it will. Logic apps can read that and then gives me this really detailed information about my response from my Azure function that I could use to go down the line. So it's really amazing how much power is here, and we're not having to write a bunch of code. And
so what's interesting is I was thinking, well, yeah, you would have to write your own code to sort of like inject it in to do something special.
Yep.
But the hook to an Azure function is a really cool way of doing that. It makes this as completely as extensible as I need it to be because I can do just about anything in an Azure function, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
From something simple, like you said, from converting a date to some whole other process if I want to, right? Whatever it needs to be.
Yep.
That's a great way to compose these things.
So, I don't mind showing one of the things I've been working on my stream is an Azure Logic app for my podcast. And what we want to do is we want to take new items in our RSS feed, and we want to turn them into YouTube videos. So that's not a quick process. It's not an easy process.
You made it look pretty easy. I saw what you were doing.
So
this is cool.
This is kind of our work in progress. Right now, I have it set up on a recurrence just for testing purposes. But the real trigger I want here is an RSS feed whenever a new item is posted. And one of the things we do, so we get new RSS feeds from new items from our RSS feed. We go through, we initialize some variables. So if you have certain values that you use throughout your application or could potentially be different at any point in time, you initialize a variable, and then you can use that variable anywhere in your app. For me, I wanted to avoid using a for each loop. So because RSS is really just a collection of RSS items. So I tell Logic Apps, and this is probably hard to see. I don't have magnify on. I don't know how well this works with Skype.
Yeah, that looks okay.
Okay, so I'm basically telling it, I want to get the body of the RSS feed, which comes back as JSON, and I want to get the first item in the RSS list, And specifically, I want to take the links collection and get the second element out of the links collection. That is the file name or the path to the MP3 file. So we take that, we save that as a variable because I don't want to have to type that over and over and over again. So we just save it as a variable and reuse this variable called file name. I have another one here for background image names. In a more perfect world, I can create parameters, and I can pass parameters into the Logic app, and I can use the one Logic app for a variety of different conditions. So we take the variables, we call a Logic app. That's what I needed to do was I need to take the URL and just get the file name off of it. And so I wrote a very quick and easy function that runs this through the URI parser and passes back the end of the path. Quick, easy, gets the job done. We take that response and we call, we go download the file. So we go download the MP3. This is where it gets fun. The file name that we get back doesn't return a 200 OK. It returns a 302, which, because I know it's not a 200 OK, I actually do a test to say, well, what's the status code that I get back? If it's a 302, I want to go down another line of logic. If it's not, I actually want it to fail. So there's a default case where it fails. So if I'm looking at my list of executions, a non-302 would come up as a failure, and I know that there was an issue. Well, given a 302, the location of the first HTTP call is the URI that I want to redirect to. So I do another HTTP call. This returns the MP3. It's all multi or MIME crap that comes back. So I take that body from,
that's the technical term.
Yeah, the MIME crap. So that comes back as MIME crap. I take that and say, well, let's create a blob in Azure Blob Storage, and let's call the blob the file name that I got from the Azure function earlier. And so this puts the MP3 in Blob Storage. So then I can go to my other Azure functions, and what I do here is I pass in the file name for what I just put in Blob Storage. This Azure function, I deployed it with ffmpeg, and it goes to Blob Storage, pulls out the file, it turns it into a video and uploads the video to Blob Storage again, and it returns the name of the new video that's downloaded. So when it's all said and done, at the end of this process, I have a video version of my podcast that has images and stuff in it and does all this really cool fancy stuff. So that's all done with Logic Apps. And then I'm taking this, my next step is to make this more generic so I can just pass in a couple of the parameters. And now I can do this for any podcast. It doesn't have to just be mine. It can be any podcast I want to. But this is a little bit more of a service.
You could then sell it as a service, a subscription service. Where
Yeah,
you do this for people.
Yep.
So yeah, you mentioned,
it would be,
or you mentioned FFmpeg, which like folks like me are pretty familiar with it, but maybe somebody who's watching either right now on Mixer, Twitch, or YouTube, or watching in the future on YouTube, FFmpeg is.
Well, FFmpeg is basically a audio video converter. That might be the easiest way to explain it.
Right.
So I pass in an image, a background image, and I pass in an audio file. And what it does is it basically puts the two together. So it's a background image that has audio with it. And our goal is we want to take that and upload it to YouTube or Facebook.
Right.
And when this is all said and done, it will do that part automatically.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool.
And FFmpeg runs at the command line on, I think, on many platforms. It's not just like Windows. I think it runs on Linux. So the great thing about that is that it's perfect for developers since it runs from the command line, easy to integrate with your work.
That's right. So I can run this right now. So I have Storage Explorer because this will take a minute to run.
Right. The other thing I find interesting is, okay, so you had an Azure function. So, I mean, we're here talking about Logic Apps, which is great because it's this declarative workflow, visual workflow. You can branch, you can make decisions. It's actually quite powerful. I mean, it's just amazing how you took this multi-step process and just kept finding a new connector. I'm not sure if I'm using that term right, that each one of these is a connector. That may not be correct. Maybe it
kind
is.
of. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
tasks or
Right.
steps is what Azure calls them.
And you just kept going one at a time. And you said, I what seemed to me like I could do one thing. You said, no, I'm going to do a lot of things. I'm going to go to my RSS feed. I'm going to get the audio. I'm going to make this background image. I'm going to upload it to YouTube. I'm going to make the YouTube entry look great. And it's just all a lot, and integrate when you needed to use a function, when you needed to write just a little. The nice thing is you got to concentrate for things like create episode image or MP3 to MP4, those Azure functions. You got to concentrate on just solving that little problem.
That's right. So what's interesting now, and this is a problem I'm working on stream, is here in a moment, MP3 to MP4 will actually error out. Logic Apps is all about fast failure. So there are 2-minute timeouts on all these different steps. And if it takes longer than 2 minutes, it's going to report back as an error. In this case, the Azure function that's running takes more on, it's like 2.5 minutes. So it's still running, but Azure Logic App says it's failed. So I'm actually working on the process of turning this into what they call, the session is timed out. And if I come back out here and reload the run, we can see the run details.
Oh, look at that.
So any run, you can walk through the logic to see what happened. So you see, nice. I got a bad request because it timed out. What you can technically do with Logic Apps and Azure Functions is you can tell it to be an asynchronous function. So what happens is the function executes, returns a 202 accepted, and Logic Apps will continually pull your Azure function to say, well, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? And you can have next steps when it eventually completes.
Okay.
So this is, yeah.
Yeah. Does this tie into App Insights? That's what I was, because there's a lot of logging going on.
So you can pass stuff into Log Analytics. So if you need to do any sort of logging or tracing, you can pass it in there. Logic Apps, I don't believe, goes directly into Application Insights. It's just login analytics. So the storage in the background.
Yeah.
So Ancient Coder's here. Hello, Ancient Coder. How are you?
Hey, Ancient Coder.
Welcome to the show.
So Logic Apps doesn't like to be blocked for a long time, but with what you were talking about, you can say, hey, if I build an asynchronous Azure function, then it knows how to wait on that without timing out.
That's right. So that's a process I'm working on now. It's a little bit more overhead and infrastructure, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that in a way where I don't have to maintain infrastructure. I think once you start going down this line of building Logic Apps in Azure Functions, the worst thing you can do is maintain infrastructure. You're better off just trying to figure out how to use the platform to its strengths, because like it kind of defeats the purpose if I have to spin up an app service to do one thing. Then I might as well just move all these to background tasks in my app service.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's see, and it just finished. So let me download it real fast. And I don't think I turned on background audio for the.
For your share, so we might not be able to hear it. Yeah.
All right. Yes, I want to open it.
Well, you'll tell us if you're hearing it. We'll believe you.
Yeah. Oh, so I did a machine refresh this morning, and I don't have any of my actual audio. So there we go. And it's
Yeah, maybe it's playing.
Actually, Windows Media Player doesn't know how to play the audio codec. So, because this is not an MP4, it's a MKV. So it's playing the video, but it's not playing the audio.
Yeah, yeah, and
That's
it's cool the way you put this.
That's
I was
because
watching your
Windows Media Player
show.
is crap.
I was watching your show the day you were working on taking that image and taking the title and building the image for it, and it was really
Yeah.
cool. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff. That's not necessarily Logic App stuff, but it's a cool project you're working on. You know, definitely a fun one.
And that was fun because we ran into an issue. I was just trying to use GDI, which is built into Windows, or GDI Plus, to do basic image manipulation, and discovered Logic Apps doesn't support GDI Plus. It's actually a running thing with Azure. Azure services run on these very bare bones versions of Windows, and they don't include many useful things for developers like us. And that's access to GDI, which is the graphic drawing interface that's been in Windows for 25 years. So let's start there. It's never been in Azure, but it's always been in Windows. So I had to do a refactoring to add another library called ImageMagick, and that does all the really cool stuff with the background image. So
Okay.
but I can't do that in a traditional Logic app. I have to do that in Azure Function. But you see, that process takes 20 seconds. And I'm imagining if I spent a little bit more time with that Azure Function, I could get that down to something less. And every second I can cut off this time, that's actually money saved because it's all consumption based.
So I definitely want to go to another question, but before I do, we should take a minute out to say, again, we're not done yet, but thanks to people that are here. And if you're here for the first time, welcome to our show. And we would appreciate, feel free to follow us on Twitch, follow us on Mixer. You can subscribe on YouTube. We do have all the archives for these shows are on our YouTube channel. And we want everyone to see, that all that kind of stuff. We've had great shows, and we got great shows lined up in the future, right? So,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And so the question I wanted to ask is, I sort of asked about this a little bit earlier. Is there a way that I see there's this code view button?
Yeah, I was going to show you that next.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd love to see like sort of how that works and how I can maybe can I work this into source control somehow?
You could. So you could copy all this into, it's all JSON. So you can put that into source control, keep track of it. This works out really well. What's also nice about this is if you're working on some repetitive tasks, let's say that, you could come and just copy and paste pieces around. I don't like spending too much time in code view simply because the process is kind of cryptic. Because you see here, I have detect sentiment, and then I have for each, but then down here I have the trigger for when new tweet is posted. I feel like the schema is kind of out of place for the actual logic of what's happening. But that's just me being a little bit OCD about it.
No, I understand what you mean there. I could see that being tricky to follow. Like if you were to just try to look at this document outside of the designer, it might not read in the order that you would expect it to. Now, my mind as a developer, I'm thinking about code reviews and I'm thinking about source control and backing up things and tracking changes and things like that. Yeah. And so now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great features in here, but it seems like those kind of things would be a little bit more difficult. And
you're absolutely right.
In this tool.
And the understanding I get from a couple different people I talk to about Logic Apps that are deep in Logic Apps is that Logic Apps wasn't even designed to be a developer tool. It was more meant to be a line of business end user tool. So someone who has business knowledge but not necessarily technical knowledge could come in here and using that big list of connectors, figure out, all right, do this, do that, do something else.
Yeah, Jason said in the chat. He said, it's like a flow chart. If you can write a flow chart,
Yeah.
you could write this. And so it's kind of like that is what you're saying, right? It was meant to be like, go on the screen and build your flow chart.
That's right. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
So I feel like, and maybe I'm just wrong. I thought in the past that Logic Apps were tied to an app service. I don't. I mean, how are they completely separate, or am I just completely wrong about how that's priced, or just how it's deployed?
Yeah, at the moment, it's all consumption based. So there's probably an app service underneath the scenes doing something, but that's abstracted away from anything that you do or manage. You're
Right.
just managing the individual Logic app.
Yeah, it's
So one of the
possible
things,
that I'm just wrong because
yeah,
that could certainly be it. But I was guess what I was coming to is how is this build, compared to we've been talking a lot about Azure Functions tonight because you used Azure Functions in your Logic apps,
yeah,
and there are multiple models there, such as consumption versus, hey, have it be part of your app service. But you're saying this is all consumption.
it's all consumption. And I have not spent enough time in some of these deeper settings to see if there's something in there I can change to try to, I don't know, finagle it to work differently. But yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
quite
so-
sure.
Look, there
As
is a
far as I
version.
know, it's only consumption based. And looking at the cost analytics for some of my clients, it's always been consumption.
Okay.
Because if you one of my big tips is put all your Logic apps into their own resource group. And then what you can do is you can go in and say, well, show me cost analytics for the resource group. And you can get the dollars and cents for how much a particular Logic app costs you to operate. And I use that as kind of a guide to figure out which Logic apps I need to optimize. Because I have one Logic app that costs me, say, $5-10 a month. But I have other Logic apps that cost 20 cents a month. So I don't spend any time with the 20 cents a month ones to optimize.
Right.
But the more expensive ones, I'll go and see if I can shave off a couple seconds here or there. And usually it's a simple case of, well, maybe when a new tweet is posted, I want to add an action, set a condition where if the user, it's username. So if username is equal to Saduki, then I go through my process of retweeting. And watch this. I can click and drag, move things around.
Wow.
So now I have my true statement and my false statement. So this will only ever run for Saduki. It will never run for anyone else.
Right.
So we
I
could
might
do
have shaved
we
minutes
could do
off my-
sentiment analysis for Saduki, but if somebody like, Joe Guadagno does a tweet, we might want to do a different action on his tweets or something like
Maybe.
just trash it or
Right.
something like that.
report. Yeah.
Right, report it.
But like you said, you can cut short executions that maybe don't need to go all the way to the end, saves on workflow steps, saves money. But to your point about your 20-cent execution for a particular Logic app, it's the kind of thing where you get it working, without being crazy, I suppose. I imagine you get the feeling, like the FFmpeg work. You say, well, although maybe not. I don't know what that's costing in consumption, but as the chart starts to get large, you say, okay, maybe I better keep an eye on this one. But generally speaking, 20 cents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Customers aren't usually complaining about 20 cents, right?
Yeah.
Never.
So can I ask, I noticed in the left side on in the toolbar that you have versions, the third one down from where you are there.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that gives you
Save this
the
version.
versioning history
Yep.
of what's changed. Now, can we do like a diff? Let's see, I'm curious to know.
So this is showing
It's just showing you the
historic,
view of the old one.
But there is
and you
code
can
to-
promote it. You can make it the current version.
That's interesting.
Andy,
Yeah.
I'd be willing to bet with either the Azure Cloud Shell or a little bit of Azure API, and you could pull some down and diff them. There
Yeah,
sounds,
exactly.
it seems like there's a possible product or subscription service, like we were joking.
Hold
about
on,
earlier.
I'm gonna make a
Build
note
a-
about that. Yeah.
Build a Logic app that detects new versions of Logic apps.
Yeah. catch a webhook or something and say, all right, let me take the code, commit it to
that.
a GitHub repo, and or submit a PR.
Yeah,
So
that's
update,
right.
Yeah. So we didn't actually try to see, is GitHub.
Oh, there you go. Let's check that out right now. It's got to be, right? It's got to be.
You say that. Yes. So what can we do? GitHub? I can create an issue.
Create an issue.
Yeah.
So you can't do a pull request.
Oh, let me log into my. Yeah, that's what I would want to do.
That would be really cool.
Let me authorize it. Save. Okay.
So
okay, so now you have to pick the repository owner. I guess that's the account, and then the name of the repository, summary of the issue, description of the issue. So so title, and then you can pass in the body. That's actually not. That is kind of useful because you might want to have maybe a webhook or something where you want to create issues automatically given some condition.
Yeah. So let's say someone tweets and mentions your company with a negative sentiment about your website. You could say, well, we better create an issue to fix the website because we're getting negative sentiments, right?
Yep.
We do have a question in chat. Jason's asking, can you take the code and copy and paste it to create the app in another account? I'm thinking if you have just the code in code sourcing somewhere else, like Git, and want to see the GUI version, like a code review. Interesting concept.
Yeah, you should be able to do that because it's all here.
Yeah.
This is everything that makes that designer tick.
So you could go to source code, take out this JSON, drop it in code view, and flip to the designer, I think is what he's saying. And then you could kind of like see, oh, this code was a little hard to read. I'm not going to save it, but I'm going to flip to designer mode and do like a review of it.
The only issue I see off the top of my head is going to be these API connections because these are tied to the resource group. So these connection names, so you see Cognitive Services, GitHub, Twitter, these actually point to resources in the let me go to resource group.
Yeah, they won't match up with resources in another subscription.
So
so these become connections. Look at that.
Yeah. Well, what's nice is I can now reuse these across any Logic app.
Yeah.
So I'll go in my client apps and we'll have a connection to our SQL Server database. And I just reuse that connection over and over again. Which I wish I had a SQL database to show you because the SQL connector is amazing because it will actually go look up table schemas and all that good stuff.
That's nice. Now, so can these API connections, they don't need to be in the same resource group? Because it would be interesting to have like a resource group of like reusable API connections, or do they need to be in the same resource group?
That is a great question. I don't know off the top of my head. I've always kept them in the same resource group. I have not tried having them in a separate resource group. So that's a good question. I'm not sure.
But there must have been a way in the UI when you said, I want to connect to GitHub. There must be it must ask you like, what API connection do you want to use? And it would show you your like existing API connections or something like that.
Yeah. So this is the part I moved off screen. When I told it to connect to GitHub for the first time, it brought up my GitHub OAuth screen, and I logged in, and then it asked me, do you authorize Azure Logic Apps to connect to your GitHub? I said yes. So if I go to my GitHub list of connected apps, Azure Logic Apps is in there somewhere.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, as you can see in the upper right, we've had some technical difficulties with Rich, who is still producing the show, which is awesome. But he did answer that they should be visible in the same subscription, as long as some other security policy in the subscription hasn't taken away your ability to see them. But just by default, without doing anything, you should be able to see them throughout the subscription, is what I believe he is telling me.
Because resource groups are not rules; they're just a set of guidelines.
Yeah. We've said it on the show. I've always treated a resource group, I call it like the building that all the machines are in, because that way that way, when I just want to get rid of them, I just tell a bulldozer to come and take the building down.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they would add a feature to resource groups where any resources you're creating in resource groups knows what location the resource group is in.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how many times I create something in East US or an East US resource group and it goes, oh, do you want this in China?
Yeah.
No.
Now, Rich
No.
Rich has made a comment in the chat. He's defending resource groups a bit, and he's probably, having trouble because he can't speak for whatever reason with his audio. But he said there is security around the resource group. So resource groups do offer a little bit more. We always joke around that.
I love resource groups. They were a great addition.
Yeah.
No,
don't worry, Rich. We love resource groups. Thumbs up for resource groups.
Sometimes as an Azure user, once you really start to grok or understand the concept of resource groups, then you start asking those questions of like, well, do all the resources have to live in there? And am I, basically you're trying to figure out if the boundary is a window or is it a wall? And really, I think it's more of like a window. But in any case, we love them, and clearly you're using one tonight. Because that way we all can leave here, get rid of the resource group, and you don't have to worry that somebody watching the video in the future, takes a look at what you did, and who knows what kind of inadvertent attack surface that anyone one may have set up. So
let's see, I haven't used this before. Oh, so you can export Logic Apps to Power Apps, Power Automate. That's all BI business intelligence stuff that I don't like.
Well, wait. Now, see, Rich is going to explode now. You're saying you don't like Power Apps, and he can't talk.
Yeah,
but
Power
Apps are the
probably be on this show pretty soon, I believe.
Yeah,
so,
I'm with you.
I'm not dissing it. It's just the single hardest thing I think I've ever used Microsoft has released. But that's besides the point. Usually with great complication comes great power, right? That's why they're called Power Apps.
Yeah.
So
just
it's been fun, guys.
Just to answer you, Saduki, we have a back channel that we communicate on to try and even make this look more seamless. So it's not necessarily just Mixer. Some of the things he's telling us are back there.
Yeah, that's probably why you're maybe not seeing him, because we do have that. You can see some of his chats coming in with the Restream bot helping us out. And I was right. I said he was putting things in the chat, and
right.
I wasn't thinking we have our own private chat going on behind the scenes where we could say like, Kevin really screwed that demo up, like just things we wouldn't want to say to him, but we want to say behind. We would never say that about Kevin, though. So.
Well, Kevin, this is awesome. Somebody once described Logic Apps to me as biz talk that actually works. That was their quote, not mine.
Okay, yeah.
And but what you've shown me tonight is amazing workflows that are so much more powerful than I imagined, and then being able to put them with the Azure functions. I feel like they're buddies that really work together well here.
There's a lot of things.
I really love this idea of solving all these problems, making the problems we solve smaller and smaller so they're more reusable, more composable.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're finally finding ways to actually benefit from software reuse that maybe we never really got in our programming languages.
So
yeah, because everything's an API now, Chris, right? Everything's an API now.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it, that's what enables this. Let's face it, this wouldn't do a whole lot. And I'm not being negative against it. It provides, like you said, branching logic and, variables and the ability to have a UI. But because all these things have APIs is what makes this thing, so powerful, right?
Yep.
Look, there's YouTube. That's the YouTube one.
So not useful.
No, couldn't find any action
triggers. So it's only it only provides triggers. They don't provide any actions. Because I got super excited. That's why I was trying to do the podcast to YouTube. I thought, oh well, when I get to the end, I'll just upload the blob storage to YouTube because there obviously must be an action to upload something to YouTube. And the answer is no, there's not.
Yeah,
there's a trigger when I upload a video. So
really good idea, by the way, though, because I know a lot of us maybe where you see a lot of gray in their hair or something like that. Like we we remember the podcast days, and we will actively go looking for audio.
Yep.
But a lot of folks, and I don't just and look, folks of all ages do this, will use YouTube to listen to things too. I
Yeah.
mean, they'll set up a playlist and listen, and whether they go running or whatever. So really smart idea to put your audio podcast up on YouTube, even though you say, wait, that's for video, but people are using it for audio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was our thought too. Just reuse all your content wherever you can.
Yeah, I had mentioned to Kevin when I was watching his show, which again, I think we put the link in there for Kevin's show in the chat, but he was doing audio to video, and I was saying that we've been thinking about stripping the video, which I think is considerably easier, strip the video and turn this into podcasts so we can reach people in those podcast channels. People go looking for content in those, and it can be very discoverable. But
Yeah, exactly.
we honestly kind of wonder, and there's a visual aspect of our show, and we've heard from people that they are good as podcasts, but whatever, that's a whole side topic. But we're thinking about doing that.
Yeah.
All right, so Kevin, I want to let you tell us a little bit about Two Frugal Dudes.
Yeah. So Two Frugal Dudes is a podcast I do with my good friend Sean Marin. We try to talk about personal finance in layman's terms. That's our whole shtick. We've been going strong for about 3 years. We're almost on episode 200. But yeah, anywhere you get your podcast from, download Two Frugal Dudes, and yeah, give it a listen. So we try to keep every episode to less than a half an hour. That's our goal. And yeah,
I'm going to subscribe in my Tesla. Yeah, except I don't drive anymore.
Yeah,
that's
right.
when I listen to podcasts, when I drive.
We have noticed a decrease in our downloads because of COVID. Like significant, where most people are the same way. They listen to it while they're driving, and if they're not driving, they're not listening. So,
that's what I used to be. That's what a lot of folks would tell me that about Static Void podcast. If anybody remembers that, is they say, "Oh, I listen to it on my train ride. I listen to it in the car." Jason Kurt says YouTube while he drives. So yeah, the audio while we are commuting makes a ton of sense. And you're also live coding. In fact, Kevin, I think congratulations are in order. I believe, and some folks in the chat may not know about this, so I'm happy to tell them. I believe you were just added to the prolific and honored live coders team on Twitch.
Yeah, livecoders.dev.
When did you get that announcement? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it happened just a couple days ago. And because I have a 1 in my name, I'm always at the top of the list.
Well, look at that. Look at that. That was pretty smart. So the live coders are a team of developers who are on Twitch, doing live code development. So it's not quite most of them is not quite a talk show format like this. It's usually, you're going to work on something and you're sharing that work with the community. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're presenting things either. It could just be, hey, I'm working on this and I'm going to go through the trials and tribulations right here.
So much of my stream is I need to learn something, so I'm just going to learn it in public. And that has been so much fun and rewarding because you'll get that person that comes in that knows something about what you're doing. And so great example. I was learning image magic the other day doing this podcast YouTube thing. The guy who maintains Image Magic, the Image Magic wrapper, Dirk for .net.
Yeah.
He came into my stream and he was helping me get through my issues.
Well, there you go.
The creator of the package I was using was helping me use his package.
Wow.
It was awesome.
That's pretty crazy. That's awesome.
I sponsor his GitHub repo. So
great.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
And you know what? And that's what it's all about. That's why the live coders do what they're doing. And Kevin is one of the newest members. I saw the announcement. I want to say it was this past week, and I was super excited because I know you've been you've been working on upping your Twitch game and streaming more and more. It's been something you've been doing for a while. And everybody, don't forget, you could follow Kevin on Twitter. You'll see announcements when he goes live. He's one Kev Griff on Twitch and one Kev Griff on Twitter. And
I'm going to set up some resources for everyone here on the Dev Talk Show. So if you go to consultwithgriff.com/the Dev Talk Show, I'm going to fill these in with a couple things. Now that we've talked through it, I have a couple resources I want to throw your way. So keep an eye on that URL. It'll get updated probably tomorrow morning because it's starting to get late. Yeah,
I'll put that in the YouTube chat. That'd be great.
I'll do that
definitely.
right now.
definitely do that. And at the same time, we will. We tend to, we don't always get to it right away, but over the next week, since this show will be posted to YouTube, we usually like to update the description. I'll maybe rewatch it, and things we talk about, I'll get links in there. So we'll make sure to add all of that in. So once again, if you're watching us live tonight on Mixer, Twitch, or YouTube, first of all, thank you for joining us. Thanks for participating in the chat. It's really great to get your questions and your feedback, and I know it keeps us all excited that we're serving folks right here on May 6th. But some of you are watching us in the future. And if you are on YouTube, make sure if you love this topic, go down and hit the like so that we know that you want more topics like this. Ask any questions or give us any comments right down below. And if you subscribe to the channel, you will get notifications that a new video has gone up or that we're live. You'll get both of those live Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Go ahead, Andy.
What are we talking about next week?
So next week, we have, and it's really interesting. You never guess who's going to be on the show next week. But we have Sarah Dukevich, also known as Saduki, who joined us tonight on Twitch, is going to be here next week to talk about Azure Notebooks. And we're going to talk about how you could use them. I mean, you could use them for a ton of things, but you could use them to maybe learn a new programming language or just have an interactive coding session all on Azure without having to download anything. And I think you can get started for free. And these are all the questions that I'm going to ask Sarah so that she can show us how to do this. The only thing
she is thrilled right now that you pronounced her name correctly.
Did I? Because that was important.
I think you pronounced it correctly.
I told her I'm going to make you proud. And hopefully,
what do you mean? It's not Sarah Dukiewicz?
Hopefully,
I love you, Sarah.
Right.
Sorry.
So that was 1 for 1. Let's see if we can keep batting 1,000 next Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time when we have her on. Super excited that she'll be here. She's huge in the community. All of us know her, and I'm so glad that we are going to learn about this from her. I can't wait. Azure Notebooks is an implementation of Jupyter Notebooks that's live on Azure.
Very cool stuff. It's cool stuff. Now, by the way, Chris, it's taken you 6 months to say my name correctly, and we talk all the time on this show. You got Sarah's name correct, but she's a guest, right? And so it's really more important to take care of the
what is it
listener.
they say? If you say something 26 times, then you'll get it right. I think I did about 55 or so. Where with Andy, I did a lot of Andy Schwam, and he would look right over me, and I'd be like, I thought it was Schwammy, like press your luck, no Schwammies, no Schwammies. I thought that's what it was, but I was wrong.
Schwammy.
It's Schwammy now.
No, it's Schwammy.
It's Schwammy. Yep.
Don't start that.
You gotta make this thing, Twitter.
I'll call you Kevin Griffith.
That's fine.
So there's one last thing we're gonna.
Phone.
Yeah. Let's see. What else have we've talked about? We've talked about how you can see us on YouTube at video.thedevtalkshow.com. And over in the chat, we have, maybe unbeknownst to Rich, we've got our Discord channel. You go to devtalkshow.chat and you'll get an invite that goes straight to the Discord channel. And we can keep the conversation going anytime during the week. So that's a ton of links. We got through just about everything. Let's see, video.thedevtalkshow.com for our YouTube archive. Easy for me to say. And how was that, Andy? That was a ton of fun. Logic Apps. I can't wait to take a look at those.
I got to thank you real quick because last week's show, you taught us about some Git tips, and particularly around the...
we spent a lot of time on reset.
Reset, yeah. And I got to tell you, I used it this week. So what I love about this show is that I learn stuff on this show. I don't know if anybody else is learning stuff, but I learn stuff every week. Thanks to Kevin today, I learned stuff about Logic Apps. Last week I learned about Git. I love being on this show. It is so cool.
Yeah, I've already got some ideas here because there's specifically a couple things, and some of the projects that I've been kind of working on, and I've been saying, wait a second, some of these feel like Logic Apps.
Yeah.
So I can't wait. So, hey, thanks to Rich for producing the show today. He's the reason why you see the screens that you see, how we're all together. You can hear the audio, all of our audio. You can look at Kevin's screen. For some reason tonight, we're not hearing Rich's audio. we'll get that fixed for next week. But still, as always, the show would not be possible without the expertise and the time that he and Andy have put into figuring out the technology here. So for Kevin, we didn't ask him to do a whole lot special. We just said, hey, get on a Skype call and the rest of it is magic to me still. So I think it's great. Other than that, hey, thank you to everybody for joining us in the chat. Don't forget to follow Kevin. Don't forget to watch his Twitch show. And don't forget to watch us next week at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern right here on the Dev Talk Show.
Thanks, guys.